Strap in, guys, because this is going to be a good one. Tyranid, Bug, Space Marine, Striker, Orc, tomato, potato, minis, STL files. Either way, Puppetswar makes some badass 40k proxies, and I'm about to make a kick-ass diorama showcasing some of those minis. My name is Troy, this is Facility D20, come on in, let's get at it. Puppetswar makes some awesome STL files and miniatures. I highly recommend going on their website and checking them out. For this project, we're going to use the Jetpack Strikers, the Rocket Orcs, and the Wing Bug Warriors. I'm going to link their website down below, check them out. First thing I did was fired up the computer, loaded up my slicer, and started to slice all these STL files that came pre-supported. Here are my settings. You can pause it here and check it out because I know you guys like to ask. First one was the Jetpack Striker. He was going to run about 4 hours and cost about 72 cents. Then it was the Rocket Orc at 4 hours and about 65 cents. And then 2 prints of Wing Bug Warriors, both run roughly 6 hours each. And a whole bunch of extra parts here. Now, the diorama needed a base, so I opened up Blender and I drafted this 8-inch circle to use as the diorama mounting base. Threw that in my slicer program. I got my STL files, I got my diorama base. I'm going to fire up both of these printers and I'm going to get everything printing. Duramic 3D filament is what I'm going to use here. I like this stuff because it comes on a recyclable roll and is neatly wound. I've had a lot of success with Duramic filaments in the past. A-glue Mars standard polymer gray resin, loaded into my resin printer, and I got both of these things fired up and going. I'm going to use this to make a rune tower. Well, not all of it. I'm going to cut off the corner and use the corner to make a rune tower. This is a cheap hot foam cutter. And I got to work shaping up this little piece of terrain that I was going to use as the diorama. There's something really satisfying with using this tool. Got a couple of different attachments, and I started to carve in some battle damage. And then like that, my diorama base was done. Took about 8 hours, then I hit it with some black primer. A couple of pieces of foam here I started to cut up in shape, and this was going to act like some ground. I wanted to see the underground a little bit for this diorama. Then I used some cork board, and the idea here was to this to be like pavement. Wanted some pavement showing and splintered and cracked up from under the structure. A little bit of white glue to glue it in place. And I also used some plaster tape here, and that was to act as like metal and rebar supports under the pavement. Just trimmed off the excess. Melted away some foam to give it a more organic sort of structure, like it's been blasted away. But I left the back of it pretty smooth, that was just going to be like a showcase part of the diorama. Had some of these marker tubes and I decided to put them in for some like sewage pipes. Good old pencil trick when you runs out of glue. Then I just threw some rubble, sand, and rocks and stuff on this thing. And I used some coffee stir sticks to act as like rebar sticking out of the structure. A little bit of Mod Podge and black acrylic paint, and give this thing an entire base coat to not only protect it, but help glue some of that rubble down as well. And after a couple of days of printing, the first of my prints were done. I had a little bit of trouble with this first print, but that was my fault because my bed was a little off level. Once I cleaned up the vat, took off these couple of little parts that were stuck, I re-leveled it and didn't have a hook after that in terms of printing. Next print came off perfect. Now my wash and cure was super dirty, just look at that. Yep, time to change the alcohol. Threw in some new stuff and wash and cured the parts. The little parts I threw in a butter tub because they were just too small and they would fly through the basket of my wash and cure machine. A little bit of acrylic caulking, some brown paint. Mix that together and created this like base coat that I used to paint the ground here. And where it's nice and thick with that caulking, I was able to hide the crack between the two pieces of styrofoam that got glued together. So far, so good. I really like how the caulking compound made for a nice organic texture along the muddy base here. I want to go ahead and mix up some more with black and do like a dark gray to apply it to the structure. Kind of to hide some of these individual beads here. It's not going to look very good when I get to paint it. But I don't want to go in with a brush. I think I'm going to go in with a trowel and try to give more of like a manufactured cement look. But if it don't work, I'll have to go back in with my brush and kind of touch it up. But we'll see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and get at it, and I can't wait to get some colors on this thing and really make this thing pop. So when I put some minis in, it's going to be a really cool looking diorama. So this actually worked out really well. Once I applied all this compound, I let it dry overnight. And while I was doing that, some more prints were done. This is the Orc. Beautiful print. And the Jetpack Striker. It's so nice when these prints just work out. Pop them off the bed. Supports came off beautifully. Didn't do any damage whatsoever. Five minutes in the alcohol bath. 5 minutes under the UV light. Parts were done. Now it's time to paint. Fired up the airbrush, turned on my ventilator, using the Army Painter paint system, designed for an airbrush, and laid down the dark coat and then a brighter coat. Once those two coats were down, I took the lightest color and just highlighted up some of the raised areas and edges of this piece of terrain. Then I used some somber gray and just shot where I figured like the floors would be of this building before it crumbled. Then I used a dark gray dry brush the entire structure. Once that was done, a second dry brush of a lighter gray color. Then I gave the whole thing a coat in my homemade black wash. This is basically Mod Podge, water, and black acrylic paint. And mistakes were made at this point. The wash I just did made this way too dark and I lost that green vibrance I had. So I'm literally going to go back in with my airbrush and a dry brush and pretty much redo this all over again minus the wash. What you gotta do sometimes. And just like that, there we go. Brought back up to color. I'm definitely happier with this, and it's time to finish the details with the ground and the pipes and this bit of wire mesh here, the rebar, and then it's on to painting the minis. I used some Deviled in Mud and gave the ground a second wash and a quick dry brush of a lighter brown color. And then I was really happy with this ground section. Little gunmetal metal and painted the silver pipes. Secret Weapon Rust pigments. Applied it dry and then sealed it with some alcohol on my brush and dust off any of the excess that fell down. Then it was time to mount the piece of terrain on the base that I printed. So guys, the last print is done. All the bits and bobs and odds and ends looks like they're done. Let's get them out of there. Yep, looking pretty good, so we can get these cleaned up and we can get all these miniatures together. Can't wait because these things are really cool. If you guys are enjoying this video, make sure to smash that subscribe button and join the facility. I'd love to have you here. Each of these models are multi-part kits. The cleanup was really nice on them. Supports didn't do any damage whatsoever, and they were super clean prints. Now guys, just so you know, I have separate painting tutorials of every one of these miniatures. If they're already out, I'll link it in the description below. If not, make sure you hit that bell notification and subscribe because they're coming out very, very soon. The nice thing about these Wingbug Warriors is that their deep crevices allow for the wash to pool in really nicely, and they dry brushed up super nice as well. Acrylic inks is really nice when you want a semi-transparent look. And I always like to use the same color wash over a base color layer. It just helps add for a more rich color. Contrast paints I'm not big on, but the red I do like. And I gotta say, these High Fleet Leviathan colors look super sharp on these Wingbug Warriors. Beautiful minis. Next up was the striker. Now this is also a multi-part kit and you can assemble it in whatever pose you want. It also has some holes pre-fashioned in them so you can add magnets. Hit this guy with some black primer. And did a little bit of pre-shading. These models are great for details. Very nicely sculpted. This is a pretty cool little trick. Use a little piece of sponge to do some paint chips. Now this Feywall green, this was a terrible green. I had to paint this like 3 coats to get it to cover. But I worked the skin up to a really nice bright look, and that's what I was going for here. Usually I paint my orcs darker, but I really wanted the skin to pop bright on this one. Again, this great sculpts, the muscle tone here and the way these little details came out, printed perfectly. It was a pleasure to paint. I think out of all of them, this orc was my favorite one to paint. I like to do a nice no oil over all that somber gray, and I do 2 coats of that, and it makes for a really nice looking black color. There were 4 rockets, and I painted them 4 different colors just to add some variation to the sky. Then I washed them in black. That guy was looking pretty sharp. Finally, the moment we all been waiting for. I got the miniatures, got the diorama. It's time to mount all this stuff into this diorama somehow, and the plan is to use these brad nails. Let's see if I can do it. I tried for a long time to look for some sort of way to pin this model, and I just couldn't find nothing in the hardware stores. And I ended up taking a chance on these brad nails. Painted them black so you wouldn't notice them as much. And you know what? They worked out pretty good. Put these guys in there back to back like they're temporary allies trying to fight off these wing-bug warriors. Put 5 of these guys in total. They actually held in place pretty good with just sticking them in. This diorama was actually a little more work than I bargained for, but at the end of the day, I'm really happy with it, really proud of it. And I think it turned out pretty cool. Yeah, these miniatures, the colors on these guys just pop. Even the terrain came out really nice, even though it took a while to paint up. Guys, I do have a Patreon. If you want to support the channel, I'll link it below. Check it out. I like to post exclusive videos over there, and any STL files or anything like that I make, I put over there as well. Also, stick around, check out some of these painting tutorials or other videos on my channel. Thanks, guys.